Welcome to our global greatest of all time family of viewers and listeners to Veterans Corner this week with Sal Santori, your host. And this week we have the pleasure of visiting with my good friend, Mr. Art Burns, Arthur Barnes. I'm sorry, thinking of George Burns and wishing I had a cigar, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, Art is a great guy. I've known him for quite a while. He's a wonderful businessman, wonderful human being. Art, thanks for taking the time and joining us here on the show. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Sal.
Oh, you
Thank you.
bet. You bet. Tell us a little bit, Art, about how you. Let me see what I can do. I'm thinking of getting some background. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Had a little bit of Christmas music going on there. Um, Art, tell us a little bit about how you've gotten to where you are. What makes Art Barnes who he is?
Well, back in 1982, I just got fired from my job. I had two kids in diapers, and my jobs had been in the working for a guy who had video games and pinballs, jukeboxes, and pool tables. So I slid right into that business. I went and took a $5,000 loan and bought a few video games and paid it off, and took another loan and paid it off, and took another loan and paid it off, and just kept doing that. And now here we are in 2026.
Amazing, amazing. Um, where is your area of your geographical area that you work within? I guess.
I'm from Origsburg, and I started my business when I lived in Origsburg, and now I live in Auburn.
Okay.
Um, actually in the country. I'm on top of a mountain looking at Origsburg, but it's how they do these zip codes. I have an Auburn zip code, and so we service all of Schuylkill County and northern Berks, western Lehigh, a little bit of Lebanon County, and a little bit of Luzerne
Okay, that's a nice area.
and Carbon.
Area.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Um, do you do this yourself? Do you have staff? How do you?
No, during COVID or just past COVID, I took on a few employees as we started getting busier with them we evolved from jukeboxes, pool tables, video games, dartboards. We evolved into skill games as well. And the additional revenue that we got from skill games allowed me to hire a few employees who I have two terminal handlers. All they do is move machines. And I have a terminal technician who also counts the money for me.
Okay, so basically, starting your business and reinvesting into it kept you growing to where you're now a force to be reckoned with. I would say a nice area of responsibility.
I wouldn't say that, but when you work 7 days a week for the better part of 35 years, you build a little something. You never taken vacations. I just built the business, and now these last 8, 10 years or so, we take time off from time to time, but I can afford that because I now have employees, which I didn't have before.
Right. So basically, this is not an open the door and gee everything just falls into your lap. This is taking a
No,
lot
you
of
gotta
work.
work. You need the initial investment. You need to have muscles to move the equipment, and you better have the gift of gab. You got to convince people that why they would be better off going with you when there's so many other companies around that do the exact same thing.
Okay.
And it's been a long journey.
Now, I've known you for quite a while, and I got to say, you're a wonderful human being, a great guy, nice to talk with. You come across as sincere and personable and honest, and caring about other people, not what's just best for art, and that's all that matters. What other than those things, those qualities, would you say are setting you apart from some of the competitors like you're talking about?
Well, I take care of my customers. The majority of my customers are clubs, whether it be American Legions or VFWs or fire companies, social halls, and I'm part of the community with them. So I take care of them, and if they need money for an event, I will give them the money. Way back, we used to be able to buy half barrels for parties that they would have and fundraisers they would have, and then maybe 20, 25 years ago, the lawyers made sure that if you do that, you're liable for anything that could happen for weeks or months afterwards. It didn't matter. So now we don't do that. We just give them money directly, whether they need money for decorating graves or for parades, for their trucks, for firefighter equipment. We donate money to them on top of the money they earn from our equipment to help them get through with the challenges that they have. It's not easy anymore. Every step of the way, the government is taxing them almost out of existence. The economy's not the best. Since COVID, their customer base has evolved. People were restricted against leaving their homes for almost 18 months.
Right.
And obviously some people didn't listen to restrictions, but the places that abided by the governor's warnings had 18 months of no revenue, where they still had to pay for their real estate taxes and their insurances and their electricity, and their compressors kept running, and they had bills to pay and no revenue for all that time. And customers developed new habits, and a lot of the customers didn't come back when COVID was over. So the clubs had to adapt. And fortunately for them, skill games were just really coming into their own, and all the supplemental revenue from the skill games really helped these people not only pay back 16 to 18 months of bills they had, but also allowed them to budget for future renovations, future equipment, future costs and expenses that they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. There was like a cultural geography shift. There was a shift in their clientele, and they had to do more with less. With less customers, they still had to do more. And the places that are still open adapted and did that. A lot of clubs and even small bars and taverns did close, and now their licenses are at convenience stores, their liquor licenses.
That's that actually sounds tragic. To hear that their license have been passed over and bought up by convenience stores and things like that. That's that's a cultural crash. I'm thinking, you once had places full of customers, full of patrons who were there, were enjoying themselves, enjoying the company of others, and just being able to be in their own little world for whatever period of time they were there. And now that's in a lot of cases that's gone. And it's just, to me, it's just a real cultural clash. Tell us a little bit about how the revenue works. How is that structured, um, and has been for the last few years? Because I know we've been talking over the last year. I've done a series of shows on the possibility at the time of taxing the skill revenue, and we'll take a look at that briefly. But without that, we want to talk about it existing now. How does that all work? How did it work post COVID, or actually during COVID, to bring a lot of folks through COVID, and help them sustain?
Yeah, the revenue from the machines works much like the model we have for our jukeboxes. Our jukeboxes in establishments, our software provider takes a significant amount of money. In the jukebox industry, they take over 30% of the revenue goes to the software provider, which helps to pay their overhead expenses, their legal, and it goes towards the copyrighted public performance of copyrighted material from the artists who created the music. So they get a cut from the jukeboxes. In the skill world, the company that I use, 20% of the revenue goes to their software, and they continue to develop new software. They provide legal help for the industry. They provide lobbying for the industry. So they get a 20%, and then the location and myself are left with 40% of the revenue. And it's a very good model. At 40% of the revenue, these locations are thriving.
Okay.
They are able to sponsor their little league teams. They are able to sponsor their parades. The veterans are able to have Memorial Day celebrations. It works out very good. We've been trying to put guardrails on the industry for almost 10 years now. We've been trying to have it regulated so that the bad actors would be taken care of. And by bad actors, I mean, when the software company I use, Pacematic, when they won court case after court case after court case that they were not an illegal gaming device, they were actually a game of skill, wherein you play tic-tac-toe and you play Simon Says and you can beat it every single time. You play 100,000 times, you can win 5% of your points 100,000 times. Other bad actors came out with slot machines and just slapped a decal on them that says that they are a skill game. And that's the majority of what you see in convenience stores. And then they started opening up their own mini casinos and slot parlors. And they slithered in and they opened up so many places. You go into convenience stores, you see 20 machines in some of these places. Some of these slot parlors have an excess of 100 machines. And what that really did was infuriate lawmakers and infuriate the casino industry and force them to come down on the entire skill industry and enact bills that try to put everybody out of business. Instead of just having liquor control enforcement target the illegal gaming devices that you see in these slot parlors and convenience stores, they just with one broad brushstroke try to put everybody into the same shoebox, and it's just not true. We've been advocating for a decade now to try to regulate the industry, and instead of being listened to by leadership in Harrisburg, we keep getting fought, and they always say that they want to enact a tax similar to what the casinos pay, which is 52%, I believe. What they fail to recognize in that respect is with the casino paying a 52% tax, they keep 48% of that revenue. So if a casino keeps 48% of their revenue from their slot machines, they have one guy on a shift taking care of all those slot machines, and the casino's keeping 48% of their revenue. In the real world, outside of a casino, that the money gets split between the machine owner, which my company owns some of these machines, and the location itself, where I had already explained we get 40% of the revenue, myself and the location. So if the casino wants to, if the legislators want to pass a bill wherein they tax our industry at 52%, that only leaves 24% left for the location and or the amusement machine operator. And that is simply not enough money when you would have to pay $20,000 for a machine. You'd have to have more employees to take care of your entire route. You'd need more vehicles to manage your route. You need more parts, more tools, more technicians. And it's just not enough money to sustain those costs in addition to the cost of the machines and the upkeep on the machines. And I almost think they do that knowing that they're going to collapse the industry. We have bills out there right now. We have a Senate Bill 1079 and a House Bill 2013. Both have broad bipartisan support, which would limit the number of machines to 50,000. And we feel that's important because us in the industry estimate there's over 100,000 of the machines run by the bad actors.
Okay.
Those machines that are not tic-tac-toe and Simon Says. So there's over 100,000 of them. There's maybe 25,000 of the machines with the software we use. So if we could get rid of those bad actor machines and reduce the entire footprint in the Commonwealth to 50,000 machines, tax these machines at $500 per terminal per month, and go through the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue controls the lottery. The lottery is already in almost every location where these machines are in. So it's an easy transition for them to say, hey, you have 3 machines at the American Legion in Lebanon. Here's 3 stickers. You owe us $500 a month for these stickers. We're going to ACH that money right out of your account every month. With 50,000 of those stickers across the Commonwealth at $500 per sticker will equal $25 million a month, or if you extrapolate that over a year, $300 million a year in revenue for the state, which is more than enough than they're looking for. That would provide them $100 million for infrastructure, $100 million for mass transit, and another $100 million, unfortunately, to go into the black hole and get lost in Harrisburg.
Right.
Even more importantly, in those two bills, by going through the Department of Revenue, you eliminate the 12 to 14 month delay in getting location licenses or terminal operator licenses from the gaming board. The gaming board is an arduous, long process wherein the locations have to go through lengthy questionnaires, lengthy applications. The operators have to do the same thing. And it takes 12 to 14 months. That is 12 to 14 months of zero revenue for these clubs and small businesses. A lot of these clubs with zero revenue, they're barely keeping their doors open now with the revenue they get from their skill games. If they go 14 months without revenue, they will shut their doors forever. And that's a shame because, as we all know, there's not enough younger veterans replacing the older veterans in American Legions and VFWs. So that's a very important point of our bills, that they go through Department of Revenue. You're grandfathered in with pre-approval until you pass or fail your application. If you end up failing your application as a location or terminal operator, well, then you're out. Too bad. But if the location passes the muster and the terminal operator passes, well, then those locations will have continued to operate as they have been, with the revenue continuing to flow for the location and to the state at the $500 a month, which, like I said, will equal $300 million annually. The math doesn't lie. Right. $500 a month times 50,000 machines is $25 million monthly. And that's what we're hoping to accomplish.
Now those sound like astronomical numbers to most folks, like $25 million a month. But yet, when we were asking what the revenues during the tax proposal season, we'll call it, was going on, we couldn't get an answer as to what would those revenues be used for, what was their goal, and all we could find out is they would end up in the general fund, which, as you very well put it, is the black hole fund in Harrisburg. So it's kind of like, okay, at what point is enough for a greedy machine, to want to tax and tax and tax? And 25 million a month should surely cure anyone's ills. And I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but as long as the machines are in existence, it still doesn't satisfy the goals and desires of the casino industry. Do I sound pretty much on point there?
Yeah, no, the casino industry, they used to say that we were somehow affecting their revenue in an adverse way. But after 6 consecutive years of every month earning them record-breaking profits, and most recently, they just released their April 2026 report, which was, again, the most revenue ever generated by the casino industry. They've changed their tune to simply state, look, we have to pay 52% tax, so you should have to pay the same. It's that simple. But it's not that simple. The VGTs in a casino are programmed we're supposed to be programmed to pay out 85 to 92% and leave them with a margin of profit. They're programmed to do that. That's the definition of a VGT. In the gaming board, they must pay out X amount of dollars. Our skill games have been proven that you can win 5% every single time. If you can win every single time, that's not a VGT because it cannot be programmed to pay out 85 to 92% of the time because these pay out 105% every single time a player chooses to do so. If they choose not to play the Simon Says portion of the game, that's on them. That's not on us, but it's not the machine's fault that they chose not to pay it. But it did boil down to, if we got to pay 52%, we want you to pay 52%. So we have a big red shiny ball. It makes noise. It whistles. It has LED lights. It bounces. And you have a bowling ball, but you're going to pay the same tax on your bowling ball as we pay on our big shiny ball. That's pretty much what it boils down to. Like a little kid on the porch with their bouncy ball.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I believe that the selling point for casinos initially was to benefit senior citizens um, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And yet, I find my research tells me the only ones who are benefiting are the casino owners, the shareholders. And they're not,
Yeah, I've been told that in order to get property tax relief from the casinos, you have to own a home and earn under $25,000, which I don't know many people that fit those parameters. Then I've been also told that when you get the homestead exclusion on your property tax, that's casino money. I'm not sure exactly what is true there. I do know that I'm 68 years old and I don't get any property tax relief from the casinos, and I don't get any prescription help from the lottery. So I don't know where all these monies go.
Yeah, let's take a look at the new ruling from the Supreme Court if we can. It had been the opinion of previous courts that skill games were not slot machines. They cannot be programmed exactly like you were saying to win every fifth pull, let's say. Whereas the skill games are skill, and exactly as you said, they're not pre-programmed. They're based on skill, and you can win each and every time. So now this ruling has been reversed. Tell us a little bit more about that. It sounds like a whole bunch of contradiction on both the Supreme Court and the oversight boards.
Yeah, it seemed that the Supreme Court is an appellate court. It should have heard it was asked to by the Attorney General at the behest of the State Gaming Board to appeal the decision of Commonwealth Court. Commonwealth Court laid out a very well-constructed 7-0 adjudication statement on their hearing, explained everything in detail, as did 3 judges in Superior Court prior to that, as did 7 other common pleas courts, all ruled the same way. It seemed like the Supreme Court took an op-ed in the Philadelphia Inquirer the Sunday before the Tuesday hearing and just used the op-ed that was obviously written by the casinos as the basis for their evisceration of the attorney for Pace-O-Matic and of the industry. They said the other judges were all wrong. They got it completely wrong. But like I had said a little bit earlier, the fact that you cannot set these machines to pay out at a certain rate means it is not a VGT in the eyes of the State Gaming Board, even though the State Gaming Board tried to say so on one hand, but they have their own rules and regulations on the other hand. So they really went out of their way to destroy an industry is what they've done. It's what they've done. It's a shame.
I'm trying to find the legal standing for the Supreme Court to reverse the decision of earlier Supreme Court justices. How does that work other than somebody sending a whole bunch of money somewhere?
Well, I don't know about any of that, but I know for them to tell 17 other judges they were wrong, including the esteemed Commonwealth Court. Commonwealth Court specializes, one of their specialties is gambling law. They specialize in it. and they put a lot of time and attention into their questions and into their brief. And for them to tell them they're wrong, I'm sure those judges are not happy.
Right.
That,
right.
and it wasn't like Commonwealth Court was 4-3 or 5-2. It was 7-0.
No room for error, no question.
Yeah.
No question.
It's almost like the Supreme Court had an extremely narrow scope of what they wanted to adjudicate upon versus the points made in prior cases, which were appealed, and they were supposed to adjudicate upon the appeal. And it almost is like they introduced their own opinion with complete disregard for the earlier cases. Yeah.
It all comes back to who benefits as to the why. Who benefits by this change in decision?
Nobody benefits. Everybody loses. Everybody loses. The state loses the ability to regulate an industry in a timely manner. The locations will lose their ability to conduct business. The people who own the machines are going to lose their ability to conduct business. The state's not going to get the tax revenue they could get otherwise in a fairly constructed bill as SB 1079 is and House Bill 2213 is. They are we all lose. We all lose. And one of the one office, the governor's office or office in Harrisburg, thinks that by taxing the industry at 52%, that the state can make $1 billion. There's not $1 billion there to be made. There's not $1 billion of total revenue in these machines. And taxing at an exorbitant tax rate is just going to drastically reduce the number of machines on the street. It's like this. What the state is going to do to these machines is exactly what they did to liquor license establishments having small games at chance. They promised it was going to make so much money, and it makes, I don't even know if it makes $100,000 a year for the state. Now, small games at chance in clubs did well, but the small games at chance in bars and restaurants ended up doing nothing because of the exorbitant fees and applications that bars and taverns had to go through. Same thing with the truck stops. They were going to make all this money from having slot VGTs in truck stops. They're making less than $80 million from the 80 truck stops that have these machines. The certain people in the state government want to anoint themselves as experts in the industry instead of talking to the people that have been in the industry for 40, 50 years. They want to anoint themselves as experts, and they're going to destroy this industry, much like they failed to properly regulate the truck stop industry and failed to properly regulate the small games in bars and taverns. It's going to be the same thing.
We got the Fauci's in the gaming industry, just like we did in COVID, where Fauci was. Yeah. And the only ones, when we ask, everybody's losing on this. The state's going to lose all the revenue. The clubs are going to end up closing because the income's not going to be there to sustain themselves, which hurts our veterans, our families. Here's a big one that I pointed out during one of my shows during a series over the last year was, imagine calling 911 because your house is on fire and they tell you we have no one to send out. The fire company had closed yesterday because there's no funding to keep the doors open, couldn't update the equipment, and it's all volunteer. It's not paid by the government, a volunteer fire company. So now here you are with your house on fire and you're being told, sorry, there's nothing we can do. And that's a very real possibility.
It's not a possibility. It happens every day now. That already happens now. And then neighboring fire companies called to immediately get over and try to save the property and save the lives. That's already happening now because people have been, they might keep their engine house open, but they've closed their social quarters, and the number of volunteer firemen has dropped to the point where they can't send enough out on a fire truck, so they call a neighboring company. That's going on right now. And that's only going to exacerbate this situation if and when these skill games are taken or taxed at such a rate that the revenue will no longer be great enough coming into the fire companies. That's already happening, Sal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Art, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing the brilliant information with all of our viewers and listeners. A lot of folks are just not aware um, because all of this has been done hush hush behind the doors. Art, thank you. This is Sal Santori thanking our listeners for joining us. We'll see you next week on Veterans Corner. And until then, by all means, as I say each and every week, please find someone to help.